Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Stop Searching, Start Finding, Using Your Brain for File Management. My name is Matt Caton, and I am joined today by Patrick Thompson.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
And Patrick will be answering all of the questions in the QA panel. So in the GoToMeeting window, there's a questions panel. Any questions you have about a particular topic that we're covering today or a particular feature that we present that you'd like to know more about, please feel free to write that in, and Patrick will answer as many of those as he can and even throw a few of those back to me at the end of the webinar today so that any additional questions we can actually present to you and answer them right here in my interface. So I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see my brain and take you through all the components of the brain that are great for file management. So today we're really going to be talking about adding documents into the brain and all the different options that you have with labeling, keeping track of version control, and the different types of documents that you can bring into the brain and how that can benefit you. And I'd actually like to start with not presenting the brain, but actually presenting a typical file and folder structure. So I've got a folder here called eSolutions Consulting, and this is the fictitious company that I'll be using for today's examples. And of course here I have a folder called eSolutions with all of my client information, documents about projects that I'm working on, Word documents, spreadsheets, even links to web pages, graphics, etc., all here in the typical file and folder structure that we all know so well. But the disadvantage to putting information into your file and folder structure is really coming down to a loss of context. There's additional information about all of these files. Every individual file, I'm saving it for a reason. What are those reasons? Sometimes the location will explain that information to me. Other times I'm just left in the dark. You know, why do I have my summer order, my sample import, my website budget? Why are all these documents here? Are they about a particular client? Do they have something to do with eSolutions? Typically, I would know the answer to that question, but as time goes on and this information becomes archived, and I rely on it later, I discover it later, I might lose context, lose information about why that document was created, why that web page was preserved, who helped me write that document, etc. And there's no way of visualizing or saving that information without simply creating more documents or more subfolders or links and connections, copies of files and data within your file and folder structure, which can also lead to its own set of problems. For example, I'm looking for a particular client. So let's say I'm looking for Time Warner, longtime client that I've been working with. So I go into my clients directory. And clients by industry, I can jump right here into media and entertainment. Clients, media and entertainment, that is where I should find Time Warner. But it's not there, so I start my search. Where did I last place this particular client? They're one of my top grossing clients of all time, but they're not in this directory. And as it turns out, I think they're in prospective clients. Their contract recently expired with me, so I moved that folder over into prospective clients. We're slowly winning their business back. But again, they fall into those multitude of different categories. They're also media and entertainment. They're one of my top grossing clients. So I really want to finesse this prospective client to bring them back on board for 2017. And the file and folder structure has no way of sharing or displaying that type of information. Sure, I have access to my information, but I can't see right now that this was a key client in the past. It also falls under another category where we've got some great references. We can put them in touch with some of our other clients where we've done just really tremendous things, and it might, again, win their business back. And I've got no way of visualizing that data. So let's jump over into the brain. And once again, I'm simply going to click down into clients, and I'll click on clients by prospective clients. There's Time Warner. So it's the same structure that we saw before, but being visualized in the brain. I can see that Time Warner also falls under communications. which I didn't look into that folder previously. Falls under media and entertainment. There are prospective clients. And as you can see, when I mouse over this particular client, it's a top client. They're a gold service level client. So all of that additional context is displayed for me in the brain. Now, I'm going to be skipping over some of the basics behind creating a brain today. We're really talking about some of the more advanced features or specific features of file management. But really, really quickly, if you're new to the brain, it's important to know that pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. Thoughts are the building blocks of the brain you create. So the thought in the very center of the screen is the active thought. Below the active thought, we have the subcategories or the child thoughts. And above, we have the parent thoughts. And again, this is where we really break away from that hierarchical structure of a file and folder system. I've got many different parent thoughts up above. So regardless of how I'm thinking about my information, maybe I'm thinking about a particular file, and that file has been used, maybe it's a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. It's been used by many different clients. I'll still be able to find that information that I'm looking for because of the links that we can create in the brain, regardless of whether I go to Time Warner and I go into my Reach Out ad campaign, and there it is, the winning edge. So the winning edge was also used in the Power Surge ad campaign, my AT&T sales pitch, and it's one of my key presentations. So regardless of how I'm thinking about that particular file, I can still find exactly what I'm looking for because of the visual interface. And then coming back to Time Warner, really quickly, the last really set or component of thoughts that it's important to share is our jump thoughts. And the jump thought is where you can really break away from a hierarchical structure. It's additional information or it's connected to the active thought in some way, but it's not necessarily a subcategory. And the active thought isn't a subcategory of it, so it wouldn't be a parent thought. So it's really up to you when you decide to create something as a jump thought or as a parent or child thought. And of course, in the brain, you can always rearrange your relationships at any time. So Fred, he's the account lead of Time Warner. I can have him linked as a child thought down below, or I click and drag. Oops, let me click on the right thought, click on Fred, and maybe I want him linked as a parent thought. He does manage this account, he's the account lead, so I can have him displayed as the parent thought above Time Warner. That choice is mine. I like to have all of my people for my different clients linked over as jump thoughts over to the left. So again, it's really how you visualize that information. And let's go in and actually start adding thoughts and documents, bringing those documents into the brain. There are many different ways you can manage all of your files in the brain. You can create them from the brain itself. You can drag and drop files and documents into the brain or web pages into the brain. We'll be covering all of these. So let's start with creating new thoughts and new files from scratch. So I've got this active project that I'm working on for Time Warner, See the World. You can see I've got an existing project, Reach Out. So all of my existing documentation for the Reach Out active project, this is an ad campaign, is here now at my fingertips. Anytime you bring a file or a document into the brain, you can simply click on that attachment and that will launch in its native application. So this is a Winning Edge presentation. It's launching. It's actually opening in the background here in PowerPoint. So there's my Winning Edge presentation, and I can modify that at any time or close that. All of your file attachments within the brain will always launch in your operating system's native application. So what I mean by that is if you're bringing in web pages, even if you have many different browsers installed, I've got IE, I've got Firefox, Google Chrome, but Google Chrome is my default. So regardless of how I link or attach an HTML web page to a thought, it's always going to launch in Google Chrome because that's my operating system's native application for an HTML link. So let's go ahead and start bringing some documents in. So like I said, I'm going to create a new thought. I like to click and drag off of the gate to create a new thought. And I've got an area for a project funding. Or I need to create an area for all of my project funding. Now this document doesn't exist yet. So right from the brain, we can create new documents. It's very easy. I simply right-click on the thought and select to add an attachment. And from this add attachment, I can link to an existing file, I can link to a URL, or I can create a new document. And I see exactly what I'm looking for here in my drop-down list of available templates. It is a Microsoft Word document. Now, if you don't see what you're looking for, I'll come back to this next. You can click on templates, follow these on-screen instructions, and create your own modified custom template list. I'll do that in just a moment. For now, I'm going to select Microsoft Word document. So I'm creating a new thought right here in the brain, or a new file attachment rather, right here in the brain. And this is my project funding overview. So I'll just start with that. I'll go ahead and save this, and notice that Word is not asking me where I want to save my document to. That document is saved internally inside my brain. And again, in just a moment, we're going to talk about internal attachments versus links or copies of documents in the brain. But I've got my Word document saved now inside the brain. I can launch that again at any time and continue on making my observations and documents and edits. So here I'll just start with a quick, whoops, keep hitting the wrong key. There we go. 2016 overview. So just a quick little outline of what I'll be covering in my project funding, funds available, risk, etc. So let's just spell check that real quick. So I can go on, continue on with my modifications, save at any time right there inside my brain. And also within the brain, you can actually keep track of version control as well. So I can launch this document and do a save as, or I prefer to, right here from the brain, just simply select the document and use the icons in the Thought Tool tab to copy and paste. So now I've got a second copy of the same document right here on this particular thought. I can rename this very easily. So this is my version 2, whatever I'd like my naming convention to be, and so forth. And so I can actually keep track, very good track, of different versions of the same document. I do that quite a bit. Version control is very important to me. Quite often I'm actually modifying a document or a presentation or a script that I've used in the past. And so version control within the brain is just fantastic. And of course, as you can see there from the icon for this particular thought, I now have 2 attachments on this thought. And so if I click on that thought to launch that thought or that attachment, I'm presented with the question of which version do I want to launch. So I can actually select from here if I want to continue on editing version 1, or now just double click on version 2 and go in and start modifying with a little bit of headers and footers, etc. Whatever my modifications are, I'll go ahead and start doing that. Save that right back into the brain. Now, we spoke a moment ago about actually modifying that template list. When you're creating documents and attachments in the brain, you can create and modify your own template list. So I'm going to create another thought under my See the World active project, and this is actually for my customer survey. Thank you, spell check. So I create a new thought for my customer survey, and here again, I don't have the document that I'm looking for, the information that I'm looking for yet. So I'm going to right click and add an attachment, and here I'm just going to start with a blank document, but I really need this to be on my custom or on my letterhead, my company letterhead. This is a document, this customer survey is actually going to be something I'm handing out to my clients to have them fill out. So I want my nice, clean, crisp customer letterhead or company letterhead, excuse me, at the top. So that doesn't exist here in my available list. I'm going to click on templates. And yes, I do want to open the directory where anything that I drop in, you can see I've already created a custom sales figures document that I use from time to time. But here I'm going to add, right here from my desktop, I've got my company letterhead. So I'm just going to drag and drop, and this is a copy of it, so I don't mind moving it over. I can right-click, copy, paste into this directory. But now that I've got my letterhead here, and I can call it anything I'd like. I'm going to call it Brain Letterhead. And I'll close that and go back to the Brain. So now when I open up that list, so right-click, and I add an attachment, right there at the top, Brain Letterhead. It's a custom document that I created, and I can launch that, and voila, my letterhead is available to me anytime I go into the Brain to add a new attachment or new content. My letterhead is there. So think of that feature where you can actually modify that template list for file attachments as not only adding your own customized documents, so sort of a pre-built fax cover sheet, or maybe it's a client invoice and you just fill in the blanks with the client and the date and the price, etc. every time. But also from time to time, new programs come along. So you've got an XYZ file type that opens in the zipper application or whatever the case may be. So you can tell the Brain, I want XYZ file types to be available as an option in that list whenever I'm adding an attachment. And the Brain will, once again, launch that XYZ file in whatever your native application is for that document type. So here is my customer survey. I'll save that. Once again, it doesn't ask me where I want to save that file to. That document is saved internally right there in the Brain. So that's how we can create new documents from scratch. Let's talk about moving existing documentation into the Brain. Let's say you're just starting out with the Brain, or you've worked on a project sort of outside the Brain. You want to start bringing that content into the Brain for nicer visualization or easier access to all of that content. You can very easily drag and drop documents into the Brain. So for this See the World ad campaign, let's just jump back to my eSolutions folder. I've got some existing files and documents that were going to be used for See the World. So the first is, we'll say, my website budget. I'm just going to drag and drop that right into the Brain. And let's take a closer look. When I drag and drop it into the Brain, it actually creates a new thought. And the thought name is actually the file name. So website budget is the name of the file. Website budget is the name of the thought. And by default, this is a shortcut back to the original file. So you can see I've got my Excel spreadsheet icon there, and it's got this little black arrow image in the lower left-hand corner. That's visually telling me that that is a shortcut to the file. And if I look at the Thought Tool tab down below, I can see that that is a shortcut. So the actual document resides on my C drive in a folder called eSolutions. And of course, launching that launches in its native application. There's my website redesign budget in Microsoft Excel. So that is the default, but you can go in and change your default for the Brain. If you prefer to move files into the Brain rather than link files into the Brain, I can go into Options and into my Preferences, where I can select on the UI tab, you can select that on drag and drop, rather than linking to files, you can move files into the Brain. And really the choice is yours. And we give you these different options because really no two environments are ever the same. If you're working in a collaborative environment, you've got access to your Z drive. And on the Z drive, everyone is sharing their client documents and in folders and directories. And you don't want to modify that in any way. You're using the Brain. You want to access those files from the Brain. A shortcut may work best. Whereas if you're traveling quite a bit, you're not even online all the time. I myself, from the airport, from the taxi, from the airplane, wherever I am, I want access to all of my files. So I move my files internally into the Brain. And there are many benefits to doing that. Moving files into the Brain allow you to sync your Brain to the cloud for web access. And I can also sync my Brain to multiple locations. So I keep my Brain in sync here at my office, on my desktop, and when I go home this weekend, I've synced my Brain to the cloud. We'll be talking about sync in just a moment, but all of my internal attachments go wherever the Brain goes. So for making an internal attachment, now I left the defaults on. So the default drag and drop into the brain is going to create a shortcut. But now I'm going to grab this performance document and I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard. So control on a PC that I'm working on today, you would do this with an alt key if you're on a Mac. But I simply click on control and drag and drop performance. And once again, let's take a closer look. There's my performance Word document. But notice there's no little black arrow icon. By holding down the control key, I actually made a copy of that document. So the existing performance document is still there. Now I have an internal copy. And if I look even closer in the Thought Tool tab about that particular thought, down below I can see that performance is an internal attachment inside my brain. There's a third option, and that's Control Shift. So let's grab a PowerPoint this time. Here's my Getting Started PowerPoint. Control Shift, drag and drop. And notice Control Shift moves the file into your brain. So the file is no longer there in my folder directory. And if I take a closer look inside my brain, there it is. Getting Started, PowerPoint presentation, that has been moved internally into my brain with that Control Shift. Now that we've shared those different options, so the drag and drop, which creates a link, the control drag and drop or alt drag and drop on a Mac, that actually moves in a copy. Control Shift, it's the same on Mac and PC. Control Shift will actually move the file into the brain. Or once again, you can change your defaults. But also you can go back at any time, right click on an attachment and move a file out of the brain. So here is an internal attachment. I can select to move this file out and back into my eSolutions directory. So I say OK. And notice back in eSolutions, I still have a shortcut. I still have the thoughts. I still have the attachment. It's a link back to the original document that has been moved back over into my eSolutions folder. So at any time, you can go back and modify how you're associating an attachment with the thought. So once again, on a shortcut, I can right-click, move, or copy the file into the brain. The choice is yours how you want to add all of those content, all of that content and those attachments to thoughts within your brain. So once again, I've made that an internal attachment. And it's also important to point out that all of your internal attachments in the brain that you create are not being compressed or zipped up in any way or even renamed. There's a files directory sort of inside the brain database. That files folder actually contains all of your internal attachments. And if you ever, for whatever reason, need to take a closer look, right here from the Thought Tool tab. So the Thought Tool tab tells me more information about any attachments or content associated with this particular thought. And on the Thought Tool tab, I've got a nice little button that opens the containing folder for this thought. So I'm going to click on that. And here in my eSolutions Brain database, anytime you create a brain, you're creating a .brain file and an _brain folder. And there's the files directory with a very uniquely named folder for this particular thought. So any attachments that are associated with this thought will appear here. And once again, without even the brain running, since it's not compressed and not renamed, I can do a search for a file name or a document and still find what I'm looking for. Even outside of the brain, I can still find those internal attachments of files within the brain application. So it's important to point that out, that they're never compressed or renamed in any way. So now we've brought files in a few different ways. Let's also bring in a few web pages as well. So files aren't the only thing that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. We're also dealing with conversations and people and web pages and web content and emails. So let's bring those emails and web content into the brain. So I'm going to minimize my brain just a bit and open up my browser. Actually, let's not even open the browser. Let's go right from my customer survey and let's search the web. So I'm going to use a special feature in the brain, and it's simply a matter of clicking on F4. So click on F4 within the brain, and that launches your web search. And it's going to search by the current active thought's name. So customer survey, that's what I'm searching the web on, customer survey. And I can change from Google to Yahoo, MSN, I can search on eBay. I can even edit and add my own list. If you like to use Bing or you're always searching in your local town's Craigslist, whatever the case may be, you can modify this drop-down list to best fit your needs. So I'm fine with Google. I'll search Google for customer survey. And when I find some content that I really like, I can open that up, SurveyMonkey. I've heard great things about SurveyMonkey. So let's open up SurveyMonkey and simply drag and drop a link right into the brain. You can do this with any web page. Simply drag and drop from the address bar of your browser right into the brain, and it creates a really great link back to that particular website. The great thing about doing this in the brain versus saving web pages in your browser bookmarks or favorites. Number one, I don't always use the same browser, so my bookmarks and favorites would get lost. Did I save it when I was browsing in IE or in Chrome or what have you? I use different browsers for different reasons. Different web pages behave differently. So I've got different browsers installed. And also I use multiple different machines. I've got a machine for work. I've got a traveling laptop, my laptop at home. Sometimes I'm logging in from my wife's machine or my kid's machine. I can access my brain online and still find all of my favorite web pages. And of course, just like our file attachments that we were reviewing earlier, an attachment in the brain will launch in its native application. So I go, as you can see, right back here to Google Chrome, and it launches that SurveyMonkey web page. So we can do that with any unique URL. Simply drag and drop right into the brain, even in the search results. Let's go back and search the web one more time. So for customer survey, and let's say I had a different search result, 10 essential tactics. That's going to be very helpful to read through that for customer surveys. Right from the search results, I'm going to drag and drop that into the brain and launch. And as you can see, it's going to take me, even though I dragged from my search results, it's going to take me directly to that Help Scout webpage that link was pointing to. So I do that from time to time as well, where I'm doing a search. I've got a lot of different results on a new topic that I'm trying to figure out, programming, engineering, whatever the case may be. I don't know much about a particular topic. I do a search and I find some really, really great content in there. I don't have time to go through it now. I drag and drop right into the brain so I can come back and review that information at a later date. And also for all of your file attachments, file management in the brain goes beyond just saving the file. Sometimes you need more information about that file. So I need more information about these 10 tips for creating a good customer survey. So rather than just leaving that thought called Google, it named it Google because that is the name of the tab that I pulled it in off of the web. I'm going to rename this 10 tips. So regardless of the URL, I can or the file attachment even, I can rename the thought name itself at any time. I can add a label, read later. So I'm just reminding myself that label is whatever will appear when I mouse over that particular thought. And also, I can take notes. So the notes are one of my favorite features of the Brain application. Each individual thought has its own notes tab. So this is information about this Help Scout 10 Tips website. Tips I like. Let's say I liked number 5 and number 7. So I'm just jotting some real quick notes down really quickly. So when I come back to this, maybe I'm going to be using this customer survey with a team of people. We'll be writing this customer survey next week. I just want to remind myself, hey, on this webpage, 5 and 7 were really, really great. I don't want to go into that meeting saying, wow, I saved these 10 tips. I read through it. It looked fantastic. There were a few things here I liked, but what were they? Once again, I'd have no way of preserving that information with that particular website if I was saving all of my web links in my bookmarks or browser favorites. So the notes add, again, additional context to every web link that I'm bringing in. And furthermore, I'm going to link this customer survey to my colleague Ben. So there's Ben Gregson. Ben is actually going to be assisting me on this particular website. This particular customer survey document that I'm writing to turn in to all of our customers. So I've got a nice quick link over to Ben. you can see in this area of the brain, I have a nice little org chart mapped out, so I know who's reporting to which category or which division of the company, who their colleagues are, and what their responsibilities are. So I'm not overloading a particular account manager with too much content. Ben didn't have anything assigned to him yet, so he is going to be my new assistant. And I can even label that link between the two thoughts. So I click on the link between Ben and customer survey, and I just simply add a label. So once again, adding additional context. When you highlight a link within the brain, you can add labels, you can change the color at any time. Notice that the Thoughts tool tab, when I have a link highlighted, has changed to a link tool tab. So I can actually modify the appearance of that link, give it a label, add notes to the link, and even add file attachments to that link as well. So I'm going to drag and drop a shortcut. Say he's going to work on our 2016 sales report. He's really going to use some of that information for this customer survey. I'm going to drag and drop that onto the link between Ben and customer survey. So you see on customer survey, I've got my customer survey document. Ben, I just have some notes on down below, but if I click on the link between Ben and customer survey, that's where my sales report is linked. So I know that Ben is relying on that sales report to put together that particular customer survey. So file attachments don't necessarily need to be just with thoughts within the brain. They can be associated with your links as well. Now, one last component. We've brought in Word documents and spreadsheets. We've linked to documents, created new ones from scratch right within the brain, linked to web pages. Outlook comes up quite often as well. A lot of our brain users utilize Outlook. So I've got Outlook open. And here I've got just a web page that an email that came in from Spirit Airlines. And I like sort of the no-nonsense layout of this email. We're going to be doing an email for our See the World ad campaign. And I really want to reference this specific email as sort of a template. I want our emails to look like this, just big, bold, bright colors. Sort of monochromatic and right to the point about what the sale is or what the offer is. So I'm simply going to drag and drop the email from Outlook right into the brain. And notice a couple of things. Number one, it gives me a nice link back to that Outlook message. But also, not only do I have a link to the Outlook message, I've got an HTML rendering of that message right there in my notes as well. My Outlook, for some reason, I don't use Outlook too often. This is a sample account, but it takes a long time to launch. And if I ever archive an email right here in my brain, rather than launching and waiting for that Outlook to launch to open the email, I can really quickly reference, hey, what is it that I liked about this email blast? It was all of the sort of big, bold colors they used in their graphics. Can we do the same thing for our client? So I don't even need to launch the email. Or sometimes I just am looking for information that was in the email, a password or a link or what have you, and it'll be right there for me in the notes content. You can also simply cut and paste content from documents into the brain as well. So let's say I'm not after all of this information. I just need some of this text. I can copy that, and I'll create a new link. I use my keyboard to just quickly Control-C copy that text. But here I just create a thought, and rather than bringing in an entire attachment, a document, link to a web page, I simply right-click and paste that content right there into that particular thought. Everything that comes into the brain, we've brought in web pages, links to web pages, created them from scratch, created new documents from scratch and links to documents, etc. All of that text-based content that I'm bringing into the brain is all indexed and therefore searchable. The Word documents that I created, the ones that I linked to, even the labels and the notes that I've brought into the brain, all indexed. So when I do a search for, I see there the word frugal is appearing in the content down below. So I'm going to use that really quickly. Frugal. Notice I don't have a thought match that matches Frugal. I don't have a thought named Frugal. So as I was typing in, if I just type in a few letters, FR, there's all thoughts that I have in my brain that start with FR. Fred, a lot of Freds, Frank, this DLL file, French, etc. So I can click on any one of those to go directly to that specific thought. Or I could do a more extensive search. So Frugal, like I said, and click on search. And notice that I have two search results. One is a web page, and one is the text that I copied and pasted. So the key text, and the other is the actual Outlook message. So it founded that word Frugal appearing right there in the content of that attachment. So all of that content, that text-based content, is always being indexed, and it makes for a very, very powerful search option within the brain as well. So you're not getting just, again, easy access to all of your documents and content, but you're being able to search through that as well. And the search doesn't stop with just typing in a couple of words and clicking on the search button. Let me take you to another search. I like to do this one in the brain. So the word power shows up in many different thought names. But if I click on search for the full list of search results, I see, once again, all of my thought matches, but below are all of my different content matches. And I can specify in the advanced search area how I want to filter these search results. So I got 2, maybe 3 pages of search results there for the word power. There's a lot of content, but I can filter through that content. So if I'm only searching through my thought attachments, so Word documents, spreadsheets, etc., for the word power, I'll just search through thought attachments. In this case, maybe I only want to search through thought notes. I'll say OK. And there were some other filtering criteria there, but rather than having 4 pages of search results, now I just have 4 individual search results where the word power is actually showing up in the content. And there, once again, is the note of an email message. The word power is showing up in that content there in the notes section. I'll go to one with a little smaller note. There's my rebuild tasks for a database I rebuilt all the way back in 2008, and the word power showing up right there in the content. So you can filter those searches as well. File attachments are also utilized for filtering your reports. Let's take a moment to talk about the reports in the brain. I'm just going to refresh my report list. And notice that this is an alphabetical listing of all the thoughts in this particular brain. So this brain has well over, just a little bit over 1,000 thoughts in this particular brain. But once again, let's say I'm looking for a Word document that I recently modified. I don't remember the client that it was on. I had a really busy day last week. I was modifying a Word document. I don't remember the title of the document or really what the content was. But Joe from engineering wants a copy of this document that I really quickly went in and did some spell checking on. So I didn't do a lot of modifying of the document, but it's in somewhere here in my brain. So I'm going to run a report. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, instead of showing me all thoughts in my brain, show me all thoughts that have at least one attachment. And that filters it down to 177 thoughts. That's still a lot of content to go through to find this Word document. So I'm going to say, all right, don't just show me all thoughts with attachments. I can say internal attachments, external attachments, etc. But I can do one step further, show me all .doc files. So there are 19 documents or doc files in this particular brain. Still too many to look through. So I'm going to filter this even further. All documents that have been modified within the past week. There we go. There's only 2. These are actually the 2 documents that I was working with today, the customer survey and that performance document. And I can go directly to that thought to launch that attachment and make a copy, paste that into an email, whatever I need to do to move on from there. So the filtering in your reports of all of your documents is incredibly, incredibly useful. And again, something that can't be done from the typical file and folder type of structure. You can do this, but it's going to take you some time because searching through all the .docs on your C drive, it's going to go through all of your application installations, etc. So you typically, whenever I do a search on my C drive for some content, I bring back so much unnecessary information. Here I can go right into my brain and find exactly and specifically what I'm looking for by filtering those reports. So again, a great way of utilizing file management within the brain is by running some of those reports. So we brought in files thought by thought or file by file, one at a time. If you're just getting started with the brain, there are some really, really powerful importing features within the application. So let's jump back really quickly to my client, Time Warner. I'm still working on this See the World ad campaign. And I have an entire folder. Let's open that folder up here on the side. If I go back into my clients, prospective clients, there's Time Warner. This campaign marketing, a lot of content in here that I'm going to be reviewing and utilizing for this ad campaign. So this whole folder, I want to bring this internally into my brain. Now I can just link to the folder by dragging and dropping. So go back and I can just drag and drop my marketing campaign right there into the brain. So there's a nice little link. I click, and at any time I go right back out to that folder. But once again, I'm not always on this computer. I might be wanting to review that marketing campaign from home tonight, or sitting down with Patrick next week at the office and reviewing some of that content from his machine. So I'll be accessing my brain through the cloud. A link to the folder is not going to work for me. So I'm actually going to forget this thought. So marketing or campaign marketing, right click and forget that thought. And now I'm actually going to import that entire folder into the brain. It'll get indexed so that I can start searching through all of that content. I'll have offline access from the cloud, from mobile devices, etc. So I simply select File, Import. And unfortunately, we don't have time to run through all of these today. But notice that you can import other popular mind mapping applications. So Mind Manager, FreeMind, those mind maps have limitations to how many links and nodes, I think they call them, that you can create in a particular mind map. The brain has no limitations. You can potentially create a brain with millions and millions of thoughts. Typically, brains don't get that large, but I have seen brains upward of 250, 300,000 thoughts within the brain. So there's no limitation to the number of thoughts and links that you can create. And in this case, I'm going to import, rather than an existing document or other database type, I'm going to actually import a folder. So I select folder, and I'll navigate on my C drive into eSolutions and clients, prospective clients, Time Warner, and there it is, campaign marketing. That is the folder that I want to import. So I'll say save, and the brain just verifies, are you sure you want to do this? It can be undone if I want to. You can simply delete thought by thought one at a time if you'd like. I'll say okay. And that import didn't take too long at all, but there it is, all of that content, that campaign marketing content. Let's look at the two side by side. So campaign marketing has two attachments. There's an ad campaign zip file and a launch party. So individual files are added as internal attachments, and other folders are created as thoughts. So my ad 21, corporate files, graphics, there I can go into my graphics. And I'll go into graphics over on the left. Again, two subfolders, and then all of the file attachments appear as attachments down below. So I've really quickly imported all of that content into the brain. I can now sync this brain to the cloud for that online access or syncing it between machines. And let's go ahead and do that now as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just sync this in the background. A lot of new content, so that sync might take a while. I'm going to go ahead and let that sync. While it's syncing, I'll actually open up my screen. So there's me, and I am actually going to open my brain right here on my mobile device. So I've got my iPhone, and I simply go to the Brain application, and I've got access to all of my brains online. So all of this content that I created here today on my local device is running in my desktop version of TheBrain. I'm now syncing this, uploading all those changes up to the server, and that brain isn't ready for me quite yet, so let's just open another sample brain so you can see. I can open these brains online for easy navigation and access, and I can actually utilize and open up any file attachments down below. Click there to add a quick note to that particular thought. I can actually modify from that particular brain from the mobile devices as well. And while that's syncing, I'll open up this particular brain from the web as well. So I'm going to log into TheBrain. So I'll log into my account, and I've got many, many brains online, as you can see, to choose from. So more brains than the average user probably. But here I am on my brain list, and that brain, the eSolutions brain, as you can see, I can click and actually navigate through this brain online. So I can click down through my clients and prospective clients. There's Time Warner. There's that See the World ad campaign that we created today and added all of that content to. As you can see, it's not quite done syncing yet, but a lot of that content is already there. So I already have access to those Excel spreadsheets, Word documents right from the web interface. I can actually download those attachments, make modifications, edit my brain online, even add new thoughts right here within the brain from the web interface as well. So much that you can do with the brain once you sync that content. But again, if you are syncing to the cloud and relying on cloud access or syncing between multiple machines, when you do add those attachments, those file attachments, an internal attachment is always going to be the best option for you. And I think that's really everything that I wanted to cover today with regards to file management within the brain. Hopefully you'll start using your brain to manage all of your files, documents, version control, web links, emails, etc., all within the brain. And with that, I saw that we did have quite a few questions coming in. So Patrick, I'll hand it over to you to see if we have any questions to answer and clarify.
Yes, we did have a couple of related questions from Earl. Wanted to know about integrating with Dropbox, and Gary wanted to know how you can integrate with Evernote. So those are kind of related.
Great, fantastic. So both Evernote and Dropbox, they basically work the same way. You've got a local version of those files. Let's see if I can open one. I'll just open Evernote, which I believe I have installed, yes. So with Evernote and Dropbox, there's always URLs associated with all of the content that you are creating. So here I've got some documents right here within my Evernote, and nope, let's go ahead and close that. I think it's trying to update me. I haven't opened this in a while. Oh, it closed on me. So, and I don't know if I know my my login. So let's try Dropbox. So Dropbox, see if it launches me right into Dropbox, or if I have to log in there as well. But basically, everything that let's sign in. Everything that you create in Evernote and Dropbox always has a URL associated with it. Sometimes you find that under Share. Let's see if I remember this off the top of my head. Because I sync everything to TheBrain, I do this. So this is a sample Dropbox account that I have, and because I do everything with TheBrain, I share documents from brains that I sync online, and share brains with other colleagues. Patrick and I share brains and collaborate together by upgrading our accounts through TeamBrain that you can check out on our website. But again, if you do utilize Dropbox or Evernote, you've got a local version that behaves just as you saw all the folders that I was linking to, drag and dropping. In that case, a shortcut to a Dropbox folder or Dropbox file would be best. In this case, notice I'm on the online version. I can right-click and click on Share, and it's going to give me a nice little URL. Here it is, copy link. So I'll copy that particular link. And in the Brain, I right-click, and let's make sure I got that. So in the Brain, I right-click and paste web link. So I copied that link onto my clipboard and now pasted that right into the Brain. So from the Brain, I'm launching this URL, which is taking me to my Edgar Allan Poe outline document that I store in Dropbox. Every individual item within Dropbox has its own unique URL. So typically, if you click that share, and I think they call it the share button in Evernote as well, then you can find the URL for that content and link that very, very easily right into the Brain. And I believe you can drag and drop with Evernote as well. I do not remember my Evernote login, so let's see if I can get back to, I've closed my my Dropbox. But with Dropbox, see if I can drag and drop. Yes, I can drag and drop from Dropbox as well. So there's some drag and drop features that are available in some applications. Others don't like the drag and drop so well because there's so many out there. OneNote, Evernote, I'm trying to think of all of them, also Google Drive, etc. They all behave just a little bit differently, but the key component to remember is unique URLs for everything. As long as something has a unique URL, you can drag and drop that URL right into the Brain, or in many of the applications, go through that share option. Right-click and get the share, get the sharing link, and paste that into your Brain.
Great. And Gary also had a question about version control with files. If you can kind of cover how you would deal with versioning your files.
So version control is done. Every individual thought within the Brain has its own thought tool tab. So you can see this graphics thought has 6 different attachments associated with them. Now these are all actual graphics. Let's go to, here's corporate files. So here we've got a couple of PowerPoint presentations. We've got a hotel invoice, a PDF file. But I like to, right here from the interface of the Brain, is simply highlight the particular document that I want to make a copy of. Usually I know ahead of time that I want to save a version of this document. I want a new version. So rather than opening that first, I'm just going to highlight it, copy, and paste. So now I've got hotel. The Brain renames it copy of, sort of a standard Windows renaming feature, but I'll rename this myself to hotel invoice copy 2. So I've got a second version of that document. I can rename it version 2 just so it really stands out. So right from the web interface is where I like to take care of my versioning, but you can, let's go ahead and open that up, and I think this is just a sample document. You can file and do a save as. So it's always, as you can see, it's going to try and save in the same directory. So I'm going to save this as version 3. So that's saved as version 3, and if I go back to my folder, you can see version 3 is already there. So save as once the document is open, or right from the Brain, just select the version, copy and paste. A couple of buttons there. You can delete attachments or copy and paste for version control. That's how I like to utilize the version control within the Brain. You can also drag and drop into this window as well. So if you create your version and save it on your desktop, drag and drop it right into the content window of the thought and keep track of all the different versions. And I typically, myself, rename, I name them copy 001, copy 002, etc. That is my process. I've also seen many different people that utilize the Brain for file management, version control, and they keep some really, really nice notes. So version 1, timestamp that, that's when that was created, contains the sales stubs for the venture trip. Version 2 contains et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can timestamp those as well. So over on the right, I've got 10, 20 different versions of a Word document, a script, whatever it is I'm working on. And what are those modifications and changes? Rather than opening them to review each individual document, I keep a nice little summary, my little cheat sheet over on the notes for that same thought. So a lot of different options that you have for version control within TheBrain.
Great. And we just had a couple of people wanting to know if you can maybe demo a couple of things in TheBrain 9. I'm not sure how much time you have left for that.
Absolutely. So if you are interested, great. And thank you everyone that asked about TheBrain 9. We're very, very excited about TheBrain 9. You can read more about it on our website if you go to TheBrain.com. And at the bottom of our homepage, there's a link for TheBrain 9. TheBrain 9 is currently in beta. If you're not comfortable with beta software, watch a great little tutorial, little video on the first look preview, so some of the new features that are coming your way. If you don't mind and you want to install TheBrain beta, then you can actually download and install TheBrain beta on a Mac or PC. It will not overwrite version 8. It will not overwrite your existing brains. So there's no harm that's going to come to your existing version 8 brains. You can install TheBrain 9 separately. And if you want to see your brain that you created in the version 9 layout, you simply need to do an import. So you'll still have your version 8. Now you've imported a copy into TheBrain 9. And I'll go ahead and launch. Let me just close all these windows. And here's my link to TheBrain 9. So the same brain that I created today, I can open up. And the fantastic tabbed interface allows you to, in one area of the brain, you can see I'm reviewing my org chart for all of my different employees and which different departments they're in. And I'll open the same brain. You can't see it, I've got another monitor, but I can navigate to a completely different area of the same brain and store that over here, on my monitor that's off screen over on the right. So I'm looking at my employees and all the different projects that I have, all in the same brain, but two different views. Change, make notes in either one, and the notes are happening in both versions. So the tabbed interface is just a really, really fantastic new feature of the application. Also, we've rebuilt the brain from the ground up. So we've rebuilt how the notes are created, file attachments go into the brain. There's no Java, sort of a behind the scenes upgrade of the brain application, no Java. So it's faster, it's more stable, and it really allowed us to do some fantastic things with the new version of the TheBrain 9. And I'll leave the rest for you to discover. So if you do go to our website and you're interested, watch the video on the TheBrain 9 or download the beta and start testing. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about what you think, especially if you're a long-time user of the TheBrain. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And you can comment on the TheBrain 9 on our forums, forums.thebrain.com. We'd be happy to hear from you there. And so with that, I think we've covered all of the questions, and we're definitely over the top of the hour. So I really want to thank everyone for joining us today for TheBrain, using TheBrain for file management. And please join us in a couple of weeks. We've got a more creative approach to using TheBrain. We're going to be talking about TheBrain for creative writing, literature, art, etc., taking a much more creative approach to the TheBrain application, sharing some wonderful, wonderful features that we didn't even get a chance to discuss or even mention on today's call. And you can sign up for that upcoming class on our homepage as well. So let me just jump back to the homepage and share with you the date of that is February 23rd for visual storytelling and unleashing your creativity in your writer's brain. So a really, really fun topic for us to cover. Hope you can join us then. And every Friday we host the Brain 101, really talking about the basics, creating brains thought by thought from scratch. Join us any Friday you'd like. the classes are much smaller, and so typically we're able to answer all of the questions that are coming in and actually demo them on the shared screen. So join us for a Brain 101 at any time. And with that, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Patrick and myself, we're always available and here to help at support@thebrain.com as well. We're happy to hear from you. So enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone.